opportunities, it's also very important that as curious as we can get to be part of it, we keep our purpose first and our business's purpose. So it makes sense as a tool in favor of it first. We've got a couple of guest speakers today. I'll introduce myself last, but I would love for the amazing woman that we have here today to introduce herself. So let's welcome Lavinia. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a little while, and it's always amazing to see your progress, your development, and how you're thriving in the Web3 space. I think Daniela is a wonderful example of how you embrace Web3 from an authentic, giving and heart filling, heart open position. And yeah, it's always very exciting to just talk about Web3, what's going on, and just talk about it from a different perspective than just the technical, from the money and all of that good stuff. So a little bit about me. I'm the host and founder of Women in Blockchain Talks. We've been going for 3 years. We are the #1 global educational and networking diversity-driven platform. So we're all about blockchain, educating, advocating for it, but with a diversity point of view. And we are on a mission to onboard 50,000 women into blockchain by 2023. And we do this in many different ways through our different events, our workshops, through our podcast, which is actually how Daniela was introduced to the world of Web3 and also to Women in Blockchain Talks. And so here I am now, where the teacher becomes the student, so to speak.
Not yet, Lavinia. So one of the things I loved more about Lavinia was exactly that. And that was the impact of me coming to Web3 with purpose, because she was in distinct of many other ways I was listening about blockchain and Web3 from a non-techie perspective. She was not aiming with that podcast to just teach about like what blockchain was, but make it from why it can be useful for us as women. And I remember me listening to that, and one of the things that I was more interested about when was she was, I think it was like in the second episode, that she was talking about her own life, her own experience, and how she understood that blockchain could be very powerful as a purpose for financial freedom for women. And that clicked with me. So I came into this not because, yes, because of the technology, but mostly because I saw how useful it could be for something that, or someone like me. And I think that's a huge, amazing story. And I've seen Lavinia within the 7 months that I've been around Web3, moving with that purpose and pivoting and transforming and learning now about also the metaverse and NFTs, and being updated as much as she has to be, so she can keep the purpose of bringing more women into the space. But it's because of the purpose, and that's why I admire you, and I'm so happy to be learning from you and to have you today. Like it's a great honor. Now I'd like to give the voice to the second most amazing woman here, or second, not most amazing, but like the second woman here. That is sorry, that is Marie. I'm so proud to have you here. You are so much into culture. That is one of the topics that moves my soul. So welcome to the conversation, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So please let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Marie Roker Jones. Like Daniela, it's been about a year since I got into Web3, learning so much, meeting so many people. And for me, I think what's been most important is how do we enter into this new space with a diversity and an inclusion first approach, and really look at what went, I won't say what went wrong, but how we did things in Web 2 and how we can do them differently, and coming really from a space of how do we bring more people in? How do we make sure no one's being left behind? And so through that, met Corey, We've had great conversations around this. We do Web3 DI, LinkedIn audio, and I'm also building out Web3 DEI as a ecosystem to bring people together, those who really want to hire, fund, just build, help support projects with that inclusion first approach, and really being mindful of it. So thank you for having me here, Daniela.
Thank you so much for your mission as well. And I think there, I'm very happy that you're meeting here today, Lavinia. I think you both have a lot of passions in common, so I love when that happens. And last but not least, one of the dearest person I've met in this journey, he's Corrales or Corey. Welcome, welcome, and please do introduce yourself.
Thank you, Daniela, and it's a real honor to be here with my good friend Marie. Just like she, I mean, we've been on this journey for a good year now together, and working on many things, and so it's just really nice and to finally meet Lavina. It's really awesome to be here and meet you all. This is part of, and then Danielle, I can't say enough of what you do in the space is just amazing, because I think I'm the founder of Brand New Voices, and it's really about, I think the mission is starting to get more clear. It's been a journey, just like for everyone, but next year it's really going to be about helping empower the new storytellers of Web3 find their mission, vision, values, and purpose. So the storytellers are us, of course, but also communities, and and pretty much anywhere where there's a connection between systems and people that
Mm-hmm.
that require us to, in my kind of definition, I call human economics. And because to form this, the Web3, I think that a lot of us do kind of really dream of, we have to manifest it actively, even if it looks like, well, that's not valuable, because that's just, we have to keep rejecting that. And that's going to be another initiative next year, is just really
Yeah.
rejection. Actually, it's actually rejection of more. The deeper the recession gets, the more I'm going to reject notions of value that Web3, because right now there's a narrative that's building that, well, it doesn't, see, this stuff is kind of a joke. It's not really what it's cracked up to be. It's, you talked all this stuff, NFTs, that look at all this junk going on, rugs and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, we have to continually, the more that happens, we have to flip it and actually build creation around the journey, and the fact that we are not set in stone. That's got to be the number one. That's going to be my number one mission actually next year, is to flip it into a journey that we're all on. And I think, like with Marie, we can attest to many journeys we've been on, that and I think traditionally these are called failures, and this comes down to purpose. So what is purpose in branding? Brand purpose is about obviously going beyond money, but it's more than that. It's more about positioning. Brand purpose
Mm-hmm.
is a very specific thing. And one comment I wrote on this branding guy that I follow on LinkedIn, who I really admire, is I said something like, brand purpose is the quiet kid in the corner who doesn't say anything, but has the answer to the entire brand. So that's why it's not recognized that much, the brand purpose. But there's everything basically revolves around brand purpose, but no one knows. Most people don't know what it is. So I love this topic that you're bringing up, Daniela. So thank you.
Wow, as always, your words move me. I think you're so wise. We always joke off camera that he's like Morpheus of Web3.
You're
And
Neil.
one of the
Neil. Thank you, Neil.
one of the things I love the most about the panel today is that all of you, not me, but all of you have been in the blockchain space for so in Web3 space for over, I think, 4 years or more. And you've been able to move in it despite the bear or the bull market and all of that part of it, because you've seen it always from the why behind it and from the values behind it and the purpose of having it as part of our culture and as part of our way of understanding society. And that's also why I wanted to bring you into the conversation, because I feel that especially for enterprises or people that wants to come into the space right now, when a lot of the noise around making money with crypto is dialed down because of the situation, I think the conversation around why using blockchain, why using tokens, why using NFTs as part of your purpose can dial up. I think it's an amazing time to talk about this. And Corey, as always, walks 15 steps forward. So the first question I want to ask you today is, how would you people define purpose, and coming from your own story of how it has moved you through your path in blockchain? And whoever feels to take the microphone first, more than welcome.
I'll take it. If I love purpose, because I do look at purpose as a branding, like it's a piece of branding. I mean, everything to me boils down to like brand and that kind of thing. Um, but brand purpose, I think, is interesting because most people don't talk about it like it's a positioning tool. Like they don't even think of it like a tool. They think of it as this core belief that you just have, and that's obviously a big part of brand purpose internally from a humanity standpoint. But I think if you really want to like make the case, if it were for brand purpose in a business context, you have to attach it to systems. You have to make it work in a business model. It's just that simple, or it's not, or it will be just rolled over, which is where it usually, I think that's why it's so misunderstood, is it's much more than just, oh, I believe in this and this is my why and all that stuff. It's like Patagonia, for instance, uses brand purpose very effectively to position, to bring in the right type of customers and repel the wrong types. So a lot of people don't like when we get into purpose. I think there's a sense of it inclusivity only, but it's also it's just like a lot of things. You can't tell a good story about the entire world. You tell it through very specific ways, very actually narrow ways that have a much bigger context to the audience, and that's just good storytelling. And it's the same thing with brand purpose. You start with your kind of what I call your like white hot core, and like Patagonia, for instance, does things like they say, we don't want you buying more stuff, Patagonia stuff. That's a brand purpose. That, like, who would say that? They're in clothing. And there's a bit of irony because they're obviously contributing to some of the world's worst climate issues, but they I guess the point is that they're managing it in a way that is for better or worse part of their purpose, their why, and saying, and their partner, they're making active partnerships, they're hiring based on that, they're pricing based on that. So there's a lot of positioning that goes on in brand purpose. So that's I guess that's how I would define it, is that it's much more than just a feeling.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the challenges of brand purpose when it comes to enterprises and Web3 is that. Sorry?
One moment. I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Hi. Okay, do you hear me well?
Yeah, it could have been me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I was saying was that what you're saying is so interesting, and now I'd love to place this into Lavinia's expertise as well, because I feel that she's done something very bright, and I've been witness of it, and is one great challenge of purpose and brand purpose when it comes to Web3, because now the purpose is not just talking to customers, but the same purpose and that storytelling has to be the column for the community that will support the project, and mainly when they're talking about NFTs, and also to the team that is wanting to work for the project and be part of that growth. So before we used to talk about brand purpose for customers and the team, and now we have the add-on of the community that can be aligned with customers but not necessarily the same people.
Yeah.
So I love Lavinia to place that into your experience. I'm having a little echo, but I'm not sure
I
where
know.
it's coming from.
I don't know where
I
it's coming from
I
either.
muted you, Corey. Sorry.
That's gone.
Ah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I'd love for you to tell us your story and your perspective on that, because I think that's something you've done brightly as I've met your team and I've been part of your community as well, and customer with a yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you make a really great point. I think what I love really is the potential opportunity of ownership, the focus on ownership, and not just about selling to a customer. And even if you're selling to a customer, you need to know what you're selling and why. That why. When we think of purpose, ultimately, you have to think about the why. What's the why behind the purpose? And when I started Women in Blockchain Talks, I knew from the get-go that it wasn't going to, in the first instance, going to be a commercial entity. It wasn't it was not going to be led by commercialization. It had to be led by community. And one of the reasons why is because how can you sell something that you don't fully understand? Like, we're always learning in this space. I'm still learning, but I've learned enough and created enough value now, and not just because I say so, but because of what has come back to me and what I see evidence after 3 years. And this is the thing, to put in 3 years plus, it's a long time. I mean, it's gone really quickly, I would say, in my opinion, for me, and particularly because we had lockdown. And those 2 years of lockdown, it helped propel well, things slowed down, but in the real world, things slowed down, but in the online world, in the space of NFTs, it sped up because there was so much time to invest in developing ideas, premises, and community ultimately, right? But the point I'm making is that sometimes it can take time to develop a brand, a brand with purpose. And there's a difference between having a purpose, or having a brand that has a purpose. It's more, you have a purpose and then the brand comes from that purpose, right? So when I started this, it was not about how to commercialize, how to make money from the people in my community. It was more about how can we come together and learn and ensure that our voices are being amplified. How do we bring more people in? And then as I started to grow and learn and see the impact I was making, then it was like, okay. And you got to remember, I have an entrepreneurial background anyway. But what I saw in the entrepreneurial world, particularly in Web2, was there's a lot of communities that were talking about, hey, if you're a woman, join this entrepreneurial group, become a fromapreneur, build your brand. And what I saw was a lot of women going into very expensive courses, online courses, and learning a lot. But there's a difference between learning and implementation. You still have to build that business. You still have to build that brand. How do you stand out from everybody else? And then if you want more support and more help, you've got to pay for that. And it just didn't sit well with me, because so many of these women were drinking the Kool-Aid, getting into debt to join these programs, and they just simply didn't have the wherewithal, the gusto, the kind of what's the word now? Not even the impetus, but that thing that pushes you, resilience. That's the word, to build. Because being an entrepreneur is not fun and games. It isn't. The level of focusness you need to have, and patience with yourself, as well as the people that you're talking to, is immense. And then as a woman, and a woman of color, and my case and my story is not going to be the story for every woman or every woman of color, but I know I've had challenges, and I know some of those challenges have come from the fact that I'm a woman and I'm a woman of color, right? But so you have to push through all of these societal, business, and just life, things, just to create, or to still be present, and then to create something that has value to your community, not just your clients, but to your community. And so when I was building in Web3, I was like, I don't want my business to stand for something that's just about, okay, well, just because I've been in the space longer and I know more than you, I want you to pay me 10,000, 3,000, 4,000. No, that just didn't sit well with me. What I want is to be able to see how far you can get within the freemium, within the community, and look at what you've done, right? You've come to my different events, you've connected with people, you've created relationships, you've built your confidence, but you didn't pay thousands of pounds to do that with me, because you as Daniela have to do the work. You have to show up, and not everybody's good at showing up, and they feel like they can throw money at the situation, and throwing money at the situation doesn't necessarily work, right? So just to round off what I'm saying, when it comes to, you sometimes the purpose has got to be the only thing, not the commercialization of the purpose, but just the purpose. Why am I doing this? What's the objective? How can we get people to a certain level without having to charge anything, right? And then afterwards, when you start seeing what the problems are, and therefore you need to create a solution, and that solution is going to take time, money, effort, energy, your learning, because you invest in yourself to learn, right? Then you can say, based on this, this, and this is why I'm putting this offering out, and this is why I'm charging for it. And you're starting to create a brand around the purpose that builds on the community, but also speaks to the clients, the customers. And, yeah. And so that's what my thoughts are on that. And it's a long, what I did is a very long game. I'm still in a long game. And most people don't want to play the long game. But I know by playing the long game, I'm going to have more longevity and also more credibility. And that for me is more important than just commercializing my efforts.
I agree. As they say, we're here to stay and we're here for the long run. And that's huge to say in Web3. And there's something very important of what you're saying. And I think that's also why I'm so grateful to have Marie here, that she's an expert in culture, because it's kind of the combination of what you were saying with the systems that Corey was talking about that is so important to have. And actually, Tiffany, that's part of Marie's Web3 friend, she was saying that she feels that community could help create and refine the purpose as well, and feel like a full circle. And I feel that community right now, and I do feel it goes in hand with purpose in transitioning in Web3. It's key because the community is, as I was saying, now interpreted, or could be the interpretation, if I'm an enterprise, if I'm a already established brand that wants to go to Web3, my community is my team, my customers, and the future supporters. Um, and the purpose, when I do this with purpose, it's like, I feel it's like cooking. I know I know what I want to have, so I know the out like pretty much the purpose and the why I want to do this recipe. So then I start seeing the technology as the ingredients. So what from the ingredients that I have there and how much of it can I apply so I can accomplish that? Um, and then for so I can achieve the goal of the impact that I want to bring with being part of this and with being part of the blessing of understanding this in such an early stage that we can think and prioritize the purpose and the impact for the long term. And the community and the team will support us and will stay, as Lavinia was saying, in our run as much as they want freely because they're connecting with that, and we're kind of guiding them into how that form and that how that how is shaping. And I feel that's what the system and culture and the habits and communication does. And that's all around like the culture. So moving to your next question from that perspective, lovely Maria, I'd love to know from you and from the importance of culture as the system that kind of hugs the purpose, the vision, the impact, and brings it and moves it into time. Um, what would you advise enterprises that wants to come into Web3 to do it with purpose and to bring that into their current culture or the culture they want to build around it?
So, first of all, Lavina, I love everything you just said. It's just so aligned with, you
You
know,
love each other. Follow each other in LinkedIn. Please speak.
yeah,
I'll do an intro. Like,
it just really touched me because I said, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I've been saying. And I think one of the things enterprises like to do is just rush in and sometimes focus on trends or focus on what's going to, you know, make us look good, right? Or what is going to be our best return on investment. But not everything has to be so rushed, one. And you have to think about who are you serving? You know, you have to think about your customers, your clients, your employees, your community. And when thinking about that, who are they? And this is why I like to stress about the importance of curiosity. In order for an enterprise to really think about Web3 and be mindful about it, they have to be curious about what is it? What is Web3? How does it align with our mission? How does it align with our vision, our values, our goals? How does it align with what our employees are saying? Ask. Who are you asking about this? Are you asking your employees? What are your thoughts about what we should be doing in Web3? How do we build a community? Um, if you already have an existing community of uh, evangelists or people who love your product or service, speak to them. What is it that you're seeing in Web3? What should we be thinking about? Instead of rushing to put out an NFT, instead of rushing to create an event on the metaverse, really ask and listen. I mean, asking is one thing, but if you're not going to listen, then people are going to feel like they're what they shared with you didn't matter. So ask and also listen, and then start. I'm not saying to rush in and build, but start to put together a plan of how are we going to approach this? How are we going to be mindful and thoughtful about it? And how are we going to make sure that those who are part of our ecosystem, our community, feel like they shared their stakeholders? Because they have to be stakeholders in this. You can't just do things and think, if I build it, they'll come. That's not how it works. You have to really be intentional and think about we need this, what do we need to know? And how do we implement this? And how do we work with people like Corey and Lavina so that we can do this right? Instead of, let's do it ourselves. Let's save money and we can do this. We know. No, be curious, ask, you know, get that community involved. It's not about you. It's not about your business. It's not about your services. It's about everyone you're building with or building for. So that would be my suggestion, is to start with curiosity.
I feel a lot of agreement here. Everyone is like nodding. I had so many wow moments there. Like I love, and I think Lavinia and Corey also knows that I love to use the word mindful, because mindful recalls for awareness, recalls for asking ourselves 3 to 5 more questions on whatever we're thinking, so we actually can dig a little deeper on it and be more careful. And I think also there's something very important here, and is, if I'm already an enterprise or a brand that has impact, that has influence, and I'm exposing that I'm trying something new, the why and the values behind that will be mimicked by the other brands that wants to do that too. When we're learning and transitioning, usually smaller businesses tend to look of the big players that are transitioning as well, and why they do it and how they do it. And I think that that's something that, as people and as leaders of this industry, especially you guys that have been here for a while, it's a responsibility to talk to those, like to talk from that state, because you already know that that has been why your community and your customers have kept with you through the process, through the ups and lows. So I think one of the positive effects I see of this, of welcoming and helping enterprises entering to Web3 from the purpose, is that they'll actually be able to see, as Daryl was saying, that the support from high quality connections with their community, because they genuinely relate, not because they feel that they're missing out of a trend, but because they want to relate. Trends come and go, and they move so fast that that same people would rotate so fast that it becomes, I feel, unsustainable. So the beauty of doing it with purpose is that we'll get to make better, healthier relationships with those customers. And that's something that I love about Corey's perspective as well, because he talks about human marketing. Um, and entering Web3 with purpose, it's also about how we communicate that. If we keep the purpose to ourselves, it's like if it doesn't exist. They need to know it, they need to feel it and be related to it as we communicate it. So, and be careful with that as well, because it generates influence. So I love to know your perspective on this, Corey, from the human marketing side, or like your own experience with this. What are the positive effects that you see from helping enterprises educate themselves in Web3 from purpose first?
Yeah, that's the big, yeah, that's the big question. And I think, uh, I think Lavinia nailed so much of the, I look at problem statements a lot, and sometimes that comes off as, oh, you're negative about things, but to me, like, the more you talk about the realities that are usually, frankly, negative, and that's just how they are. They're usually pain points that, especially when you talk about enterprise, because there are very few enterprises that want pain. And when you go into purpose and mission and values, that actually brings up more pain than benefits. And it's something that a lot of people don't want to admit. But so we enterprise and both corporate in general will like to talk about all this stuff. But, as Marie and I have talked about a lot, like during times of a crisis. So George Floyd, yeah, I mean, there's just an endless string of tragedies that, where's their purpose when that, well, they find some purpose and usually market it, and it comes off as performative. And so this is the biggest problem, I think. Marie and Lavinia can speak more powerfully to this, but in my mind, it's not good enough to just talk about purpose. You have to show it, and enterprise who wants to talk about purpose, you have to hold them to the fire, because the way that you do that, I don't think is just by threatening them and saying, that's one method, but I don't think that works. I think it's, but what I do is I like to remind people mission, vision, values are under something that a lot of people don't realize are called core commitments. Core commitments are how I like to talk about all these things, because that's what I talked about in my human marketing, is that when you frame it from core commitments, the very deepest business level can understand that, people can understand that, and that means the brand has commitments, the customers have commitments, you make commitments to the customers, the customers also make commitments to the brand. If you're genuine about your mission, vision, values, purpose, all these things, if you are very genuine and you are helping people in those mission statements, then they have a commitment to you. And it's not incorrect to say that, because these things are very big. They're so big that, like, how do you solve climate? How do you solve diversity? How do you solve all of these things? It's not a one brand thing. It's ridiculous to even think that one brand or two brands or 100 brands can do it. It makes no sense. You need what you need to do, and what people need to understand is that it's a first of all, it's a journey, and secondly, you need to empower other enterprise, other communities, people to push your agenda forward, and then which becomes their agenda. You have to make it theirs. So really, to me, like, the answer to a lot of this stuff is to empower enterprise, that they can have an effect on other people, not so much for them. So it's not really for them in my mind. You're really doing it for their customer base, because that's their desire. Their desire is always going to lie with their customer base. So no matter how much you want to say, oh, we're going to really go deep into your mission, vision, values. I've been through this so many times that most marketers have given up on that. Frankly, they laugh at it. They laugh at me when I say it. I know I'll bet you 99% of marketers out there will go like, this guy's full of shit. Seriously, that I've had it said to me directly by high level marketers, and I'll always say, that's fine, because you're not a traveler on the long term journey, first of all. So that's okay. But the people who are going to get it are going to understand it's a collaborative effort, and it's not going to be a one brand team. So
welcome the French talk.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a family channel.
It's fine. I love when that happens. And what I was thinking is, yes, and I love how all these questions, in my perspective, always comes back to being human. So for enterprises or for people, being part of Web3, being part of innovation, entrepreneuring in whichever web world, and choosing to live with purpose is definitely not a rush. It's meant to be long term, because the ups and lows will happen, but the idea is to bring ourselves into this as a muscle. So when those challenges comes, we're trained to get creative enough to have the curiosity to adapt, move, and pivot, keeping that core first. And I feel that's one of the most important things to think, because when we rush into it is when we make the wrong decisions, that I feel it always backfires. And I saw a lot of nodding from Lavinia. Yeah. There
I'm
you
ready
go.
I'm ready to jump in. I think there is I'm kind of changing the subject a little bit and talking about entrepreneurship. It is a privilege to be an entrepreneur. It is a privilege to bring ideas, passion, vision, mission, purpose, intentionality to an environment, to a space, to a community. And so when you're talking about don't rush in, because if you go in right? This is my purpose. That's your purpose. And I think, Maria touched on it beautifully. It's not about you. It's not about your business. Your business is a conduit, is a vehicle to bring the purpose, to bring the value to a community. But it's not about your business. It's not about you. It's about the people you're serving. Be a servant leader. And going back to what Corey was saying, and the question of why would you, well, first of all, Corey, it isn't a one brand or one company. It's collective. Look at the world that we live in. We're human beings collectively. So some people will say, I feel bad for that situation, but it's not, what's it got to do with me? And it has everything to do with you. And sometimes feel, well, I've just got to look for myself and check for myself and protect myself, because they don't need to deal with the problem. I walk into a room, I see not necessarily the problem, but I see the imbalances. I can't walk away from that. That's just a part of my world. For some people, they can walk away from it, so they can talk the talk. But sometimes you have to feel it to know it, to understand it, and to want to do something about it at whatever cost. Some people, and a lot of people in power, they don't have to think about it. And so it's easy for them to just talk the talk and then park it and focus on other areas, right? But Web3 is an opportunity for us not to park it. Web3 is an opportunity for us to confront it and to walk with it and to be purposeful and intentional with it in regards to how we show up and show other people how they should deal with the imbalances, the inequalities of this world. And then the final thing I want to say is the question, what would you advise enterprises how to enter the Web3 with purpose? If you don't have the purpose, but someone who does, and they speak, you hear them and you speak, and they speak to your spirit or to the spirit or the value. And Corey also touched on the thing about core principles. Most big companies, or all companies, should have an element of CSR, corporate social responsibility, which speaks to the values, speaks to the core principles of what that enterprise stands for. So if you are able to execute, then partner with a company that can support them, and don't just be like, right, we're investing this amount of money so that you can make us look good. Be part of the conversation, but allow them to lead, or allow them to impact and show the company how they should lead with purpose in Web3. So if you can't do it, then partner with a company that is doing it and learn from them and support them, because there's many corporations or small businesses, non-profit, profit, that could do with that support. And that's where collaboration and partnership and sponsorship and all of that stuff come in.
I love that perspective so much. And also because I feel that one of the main whys a lot of us are wanting to build in Web3 is because we really want to kind of paraphrase the values of entrepreneuring, the values of enterprises, into a more fair, transparent, equitable, and collaborative world. And I think what you just said is so important, because I think sometimes this is seen with a lot of I think was the cave situation of Platon, that you just got to see as if you were in a cave as far as your shadow goes. And I feel sometimes if we do not put into the conversation ourselves, showing the situations that we advocate for, they might not see it because it feels far. And that's also why, for me, having you around, all of you three, into Web3 is so important, because you're showcasing how to use technology for good to solve in real life problems for people today, so it can also be better in the future. So it's a purpose that is attached to clear values and clear impact today for future thinking as well. And I really, really appreciate that. And also having the, like, being humble enough to think, maybe it's not my enterprise that can do that, but maybe it's this part of it. And maybe if I partner with them, together we can rise, together we can solve it. So coming into Web3 with the opportunities it has to rewrite stories and to build from a different value state and position, it's also a call of awareness that now is the time to make those choices and start listening to other people and start listening to in real life problems to see how to place that tool in value for that, more than just replicating previous business models that are already there, if that makes sense. Like, both are welcome, and I think Web3 has space for everyone, of course, but I feel that that's a huge deal breaker for a brighter future, to use this opportunity for that, for showing up and for bringing more awareness and ears and collaboration, for higher purposes, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on this, Marie? I see.
Um, I just feel like everything you shared just aligns perfectly with the conversations I've had with Corey, the conversations that I've been having in Web3. Like, I think one of the biggest challenges coming from a startup world and tech, everything's about stealth mode. You can't, like, I can't let you know what I'm building, or, my startup is this, and get wrapped up in this world. But Web3 is so different. And I think one of the biggest things to take away is you don't have to do it all. What you just said is, like, you can collaborate, partner with other people that do it better. Like, if it's not in your wheelhouse, why are you pushing to make it part of something that doesn't align with anything you're doing? And it's because people feel like I have to be the first, or I have to, or enterprises and companies feel like we've got to be the trailblazers. You don't have to, because what's bigger than you and your services and mission is the community. And people tend to forget that it's not just about the community that you serve, but the community that you work with, you collaborate with, you partner with, the community that can be so fulfilling and provide you with what you can't do. We can't do it all. We need each other. We need each other. We need ideas, and we need to learn what other people are doing and how they do it, and how we can connect with them to work with them, instead of trying to build the same thing and doing it too. It's not how, this is not the purpose of Web3. The purpose is, I see you, I value you, and how can we make impact together? And that should be what, we move forward with.
If I could jump in, I love what Maria is saying, because it just occurred to me, like, this analogy that enterprise and especially any company, really small or large, tends to look at, and I think this goes back to also what Lavinia was alluding to about the specialness of Web3, and I believe this too, that there's a chance to do things markedly different, not just in a different way. And this comes in the form of, like, tokenization of values and things like this, of humanizing the tech is what I call it. But I was thinking of this analogy, like, which I think is very accurate. Companies tend to look at purpose, mission, and all this stuff as the Tour de France. They're in a race, so they want to, that's the purpose. What's the purpose of the Tour de France? To win. But healthy biking culture is not about winning. You just do it every day. You build it in. And so what are the benefits of that? The benefits are much greater in the lifestyle of biking, because they're long term. that spurs economics, that spurs new companies, that spurs value creation, and it's just ongoing. You never solve for biking. You just do it. It's part of the health of the community. So I think that's where you have to make a distinction of, especially when you're working with companies, because they do tend to look at things as like, you'll hear things like, well, our runway for this initiative is X, and it's usually a transactional number or a time frame, and it's very like pressure suddenly. Okay, we have to make this work. We have a year's runway to do X, Y, Z. So what happens after that? Well, what happens is they get rid of it, and this happens all the time. Foundations, I know a lot of enterprise like Nike. They do wonderful things, but in the background, I know a lot of insider stuff too that goes on, and they have all kinds of foundations. They have all kinds of groups inside of the company, and all big companies have this. And there's just amazing rock stars that are pushing the envelope, right? Airbnb, all of these companies. But the problem, what I've heard again and again from a lot of the leaders in these companies, is that they don't have the support from the top all the time. And it's a lot of performative stuff, but mostly it's because the company doesn't want to let that bleed into the entire brand. They just don't want it. They treat it like an initiative versus a lifestyle, like the biking analogy, that's why I think we have to frame it just a journey. It's a continuous journey that adds, and I think you said it earlier, Daniel, like it just adds health to the entire ecosystem, the customer base, the partners, the brand, the employees, and so forth and so on. So I suppose that's all of our jobs, is to sort of like bring that out and through, Marie does a lot of like employee experience, things with ESGs and that kind of thing. And so that's a big part of it, I think, to build it into the culture of the enterprise is really the goal, I think, for a lot of us.
I completely agree with you, especially for the health part of it. I feel that we are in a good time to break with some, and like for enterprises to go into Web3, thinking of long-term strategies, to break some of the bad habits and FOMO and hype, and more habits of long-term culture of high quality connections and healthy relationship with brands. And I feel that that is one of the key learnings on the while of things as what you do, Corey, with human marketing. So I really have appreciated so much this conversation. This topic especially is one of my favorites, and and representing here WEYU Academy, for me, is very, very important to understand that if we're in a state and the responsibility of helping enterprises learn from Web3 and coming to using these tech tools to bring awareness constantly on the why behind these tech tools, on the why I choose XYZ option of like the suit that Web3 is bringing me to, but prioritizing purpose, positive impact, and being aware that all of that we've been talking about in community, in culture, in team, in the entrepreneurs themselves, it's everyone is people. And I always say that, and when you always bring that into the table and you take off titles and you take off many other things, you come back into the sensitivity of what you're doing. So thank you, all of you three, for your time, your wisdom, and especially for the purposeful work you're doing in Web3. I admire all of you and appreciate all of you. And hopefully everyone that sees this video today gives 3 more whys on what they're doing. That's an exercise that Corey recently did with me, and I was like, I don't know the 4th why, but it really pushes you to think more and to go farther and for so build brighter. So thank you. Thank you a lot. If you want to give any close messages, more than welcome to.
Well, I want to thank you, Daniela, for putting this together, and your leadership in this space is, I've just love what you're doing. It's so important, It's really, really critical of the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you
Yeah.
too.
And wanted to echo that because I think for you to really come from this space of, again, being intentional and mindful, it's so beautiful to see, and bringing people together that are just aligned with what you're doing. Thank you for thinking of this and doing it. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I echo what Corey and Maria says, and it's important to lead and to build the brand, to build the voice around this, because too many times I see courses on LinkedIn online and it's talking about Web3 for enterprise, and they don't touch on this aspect, the purposeful aspect, the aspect of collaboration. And I just want to just leave this reminder for people. Web3, just like most spaces, is about collaboration. But the difference with Web3 and collaboration is there's the essence of ownership. So if you do it right and you collaborate for the right reasons and you build correctly, you can create value for all of you. So it isn't like, oh, well, I don't want to. I know I'm doing something similar to Maria or to Lavinia or to Daniela, but I'm going to do my own thing because I want to be the leader, because I don't want to feel like I'm giving all this effort and what am I getting back in return? With Web3, if you do it properly, you collaborate properly, all of you can get a piece of that ownership, and that ownership is baked into an algorithm that is on the blockchain. No one can take that away from you. But you can't just walk in and say, well, this is what I want off the get-go because this is who I am. You can't lead with, in my opinion, and I've always been like this, irrelevant of Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. You cannot lead with ego. You have got to lead with the spirit of collaboration and of equality, of inclusion, of diversity, so that everybody can get a share of the pie. Everybody can get a piece based on also what you're putting in, you know? And yeah, there's still many areas, quirky areas and things that we need to fix and we need to refine. But let's start from somewhere, and blockchain technology is a great place to start from, with the mindset of collaboration and ownership and equity. So yeah, I just wanted to just add that.
Loving closing words. I don't want to add anything on that because it was very, very powerful. Like, boom. Thank you for existing. I'll keep watching all of you and learning from all of you, and have a wonderful evening or day from where you're standing today. Big hugs.
Thank you, everyone.